Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Pole Position for the Atari 2600, released in 1982 by Atari. This is a racing game that really stands out on the system. I know it's basic by today's standards, of course, but for what the system was capable of back then, this was pretty decent. There are two races in this game. There's a qualifying lap, and then there's the Grand Prix. You race against time and other cars. Other cars that are really sensitive if you touch them. It's an instant crash if you touch another car, so be careful. There's just no scraped paint here, nothing but explosions. You earn points every time you complete a lap, and you get extra points for every car you pass. I used to race this plenty when I was younger, and I can confidently say we never really paid attention to points. We just kept on going. The main race is 4 laps long, and you need to keep ahead of the other cars to complete a lap before the time runs out, to extend your clock and continue the race. You start in low gear, and you steer left to right with the joystick. Push the controller forward to accelerate in low gear, and pull back in the joystick to switch and accelerate to high gear. The fire button here is the brake, but you really won't be using that one too much, I don't think. It's probably why I don't get top scores in a game like this anyway. Reading all these instructions makes me think the game is actually maybe a little more complex than I used to give it credit for. I always just raced and hoped for the best. But I have to say, playing this again, overall, they did a good job in the basic handling of the game. If you run over the edge of the course, you'll start to slow down like you'd expect, until you get yourself back on track. If you crash or you're too slow, you'll need to shift into low gear to get proper acceleration. The crashes do seem sensitive to me, but I feel like they're good enough that, you don't have to have lives in the game. If you crash, what happens is it takes time off of your timer, and that's basically the concern here. Too many crashes just eats away too much time and you can't continue. I guess the graphics for the car make sense, but all the enemy cars here are just yellow blobs to me. There's nothing exciting to look at. They certainly would have benefited from additional colors, or at least they colored the tires, that would be great. Instead we got these funny looking yellow things. The starting jingle to the game is pretty nice, and the sound made when cars drive by you, or you drive by them, that seems reasonable to me. Overall, I'd have to say the appearance of the game is good, but for long plays, it will feel monotonous to keep looking at that blue sky. It's too bad they didn't shift to dusk or night. I know some other Atari games that have done that, but that really would have been great to play here. The arcade game that this was built off of was originally built by Namco, and the basic color palette, I'd have to say it is pretty similar to what we have here, just that the graphics are definitely nicer, and there are more adornments on the racetrack. You'll pass signs with real advertisements on them, and you'll actually see cars with other actual graphics, not just those weird yellow splotches. Pole Position also became a Saturday morning cartoon in the 80s. I believe it was a Japanese animated show, and although I have yet to actually sit through an actual episode, I know there were 2 cars. There was a red car and a blue car, and in this cartoon, these cars could transform and fly. That is something you definitely cannot do in this game. They also had some sort of computer on board, kinda like the TV show Knight Rider. It was a higher quality animation than a lot of the cartoons back then, especially for a Saturday cartoon. Most of them were throwaways. Also, the introduction song for the Pole Position cartoon was actually fairly memorable. I think you can catch it online. Well, that's all I have for Pole Position on the Atari 2600. Thanks for taking some time to stop by and watch.